In this expansive and soul-stirring conversation, my guest shares how courage, curiosity, and lived experience have shaped her radical reimagining of public health. From leaving traditional institutions to stepping fully into purpose, she reflects on what it means to color outside the lines, take up space, and practice public health as a form of protest, healing, and love. She invites us into her world as an educator, community builder, and truth teller, someone who lights the way by embodying the change she wants to see. With clarity, conviction, and joy, she reminds us that resistance can be beautiful and that our breath, boundaries, and brilliance are tools for transformation. You're listening to the Courageous Public Health Podcast, Episode 19. To all the courageous Black, Indigenous, and women of color leading in public health, this podcast is your space to turn up the volume on your courage. This space centers your voice. This space celebrates your passion. This space amplifies your courage. My role? To listen, to amplify, and to stand with you in the fight for equity. My name is Dr. Christy McClamrock. I'm an epidemiologist, consultant, the founder and CEO of Courageous Public Health, and the host of the Courageous Public Health Podcast. Each week, I have unfiltered conversations with BIPOC women in public health about the challenges you face, the power you hold, and your vision for the future. We talk about the authenticity, vulnerability, and courage that you bring, not just to public health, but to every part of your lives. Because courage is about action, even in fear. It's about taking up space, leading unapologetically, refusing to be erased, and knowing you never have to do it alone. If you're ready to turn up the volume on your courage, if you're ready to take up space, if you're ready to smash the racist, patriarchal, cisnormative, heteronormative, ableist, capitalistic systems, then let's dive into this brand new episode. Thank you for joining me on this episode. I'd like to start by introducing myself if you're brand new to the podcast, or reintroducing myself if you're a returning listener. My name is Dr. Christy McClamrock, and I am the CEO of the Courageous Public Health Consulting Firm, where we support public health organizations through workshop design and facilitation and speaking engagements. I am so excited to introduce you to my guest on this episode. Let me formally introduce her, and then we'll jump right into our conversation. Jannah Bierens, she, they, is a pro-Black North Carolina native, currently living in Michigan, working locally and nationally as a racial equity consultant, transformational leadership coach, and seasoned facilitator. As founder of PHREEEDOM LLC, that's PHREEEDOM, she leads with love and joy through facilitating reflective dialogue around root causes of oppression, strategies for sharing and shifting power, and reclaiming narratives for self, systems, and social transformation. With 25 years, mostly in community-based public health practice, Jannah's lived and career experience, combined with their M.P.H and M.A in social justice and community organizing, shapes a historical and political analysis that compels them to examine and name systemic power imbalance with unapologetic truth. Most importantly, it is the guidance through generations of Black superwomen that have prepared them most for working collectively and in community to get PHREEE free. Let's connect my conversation with Jannah Bierens right now. Hi there, Jannah Bierens. We just had this whole conversation about getting your name right.
Okay.
It's so nice to have you here. I'm very excited. You are someone who I invited to the podcast because of what you post on LinkedIn. Mm-hmm. I've been following you, and I've really been appreciating all of your posts and your perspective. And so this is the first time we're meeting.
Yeah.
But it's a
it's a formed by LinkedIn, a relationship formed by LinkedIn.
And that is the whole point, right? I'm excited to see that it works,
It works. Oh my gosh. LinkedIn actually works to make connections.
Yeah.
Totally.
Thank you for having me, Christy. It's a gift to be here.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for being here. So I want to start by letting you introduce yourself.
Yeah, so much to say.
So much. Go for it.
I'll sum up that what isn't shared in my bio. And I just hate these things. I just hate talking about myself. I think a lot of people do. But overall, I'm a public health nerd, a social justice warrior. I've been in public health for over 25 years now, and really have spent a lot of time on the community side of practicing public health in community living and working in the same communities, and really have come to learn that, there is so much more that we need to understand when it comes to making sure that everyone has supportive, healthy environments. And I really got into public health because of my perspective of health as a justice issue for many populations in this country, but by way of Black culture, and some of the things that just frustrated me as a young person and wanting to be part of change. So I don't just give it, I live it. My work has always been more than a job for me, and it's always been beyond just 9 to 5. It is really, for me, really important to my legacy, how I want to live, how I want to show up, and what I want to leave behind. And that is the world in a better place, quite frankly. But I can dream, and I will. And so, and with the understanding that I struggle with hope, but I have to know, because of my own existence, that hope is possible, that healing is possible, that change is possible. And so that's why I show up every day, even when things get hard. And we've been seeing hard in public health really in the last several years, so yeah.
We've been seeing hard. That is so true.
Yeah.
I think we should jump right into the questions. And I'm always really excited to ask people about this first question, about courage. It's Courageous Public Health podcast. Mm-hmm. So the first question, of course, is about courage. And I do like to differentiate between courage and bravery, right? Because bravery is taking action without fear, while courage is taking action despite fear. Mm-hmm. And I find in my life that I have to pull on courage way more than I have to pull on bravery.
Yeah.
Because I feel the fear, like the fear is real.
Yeah.
So I want to invite you to share some experiences from your life where you've acted courageously. I know there are many.
There are many, and I think there are specific examples that would be, great. And I use so many of my own experiences and case studies and scenarios in my workshops, working with organizations as like practices. So on this end of that, feeling grateful for those moments where I have learned, but also that others can learn from it. But I often say just me showing up every day, like making a choice to be conscious and making a choice to go against status quo is really a courageous act that I take every single day. And I often say that being revolutionary is a risk, because it rocks the boat. And when you rock the boat in a society where it's like, no, we got to conform to the norm to be successful, we need to do this, that, and the third. We're socialized into this one right way of being. When you choose the color outside the lines, and we're taught that from a young age, you get in trouble. You got to fall in line. And if you don't, you're not gonna reach a level of success, and even the assumption that we all have the same idea of success, right? And so coming home to who you are outside of socialization takes courage, because we're not given the tools to explore ourselves or each other within our historical context, within our conditions, our current conditions, and making sense of what that means in our differing experiences. And with that being said, I would say the biggest act of courage to date that I've made is that because I see all those things and I understand those things, and I feel very deeply the ways in which we operate being very oppositional to who I am in my greatest, fullest self, that when I left organizations and started working for myself, it was scary, still scary. Scary for a while. The fear doesn't go away, right? I think there's always going to be a fear of the unknown, because if you don't know it, you're going to have a fear around it, because we want to know everything. We want to have control, and we don't have control as much as we think we do as humans. I mean, it's funny, it's laughable. But like, yeah, that was a huge jump. Like, that was something I did, and continuously have fear over, like, just how is this going to go? Am I cut out for this? Always asking these questions to yourself, but knowing that me valuing myself was healing and liberating, and that what I had to contribute, there was a need and there was a gap, and following my heart and following my purpose, regardless of what external things were being said, and knowing that everyone's not going to be on board, but that you don't need everyone on board. And I'm a living, breathing example that you don't need everyone on board for things to change. So yeah, I mean, all over courageous acts all over, Christy, but like, that was a big one that's still hard, and I will continue to learn from, probably for a lifetime.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much unknown, right? There's so much unknown in doing something different than what we've done. And being a public health entrepreneur is not what we're usually trained for. Right? Yeah.
That's real. That is so real.
Yeah. But it's also so great. As someone who also considers themselves a public health entrepreneur, like, there's so much power in that, and so much potential for radical change.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I really wouldn't have seen it as much, I think, had I not taken that act of courage. And yeah.
And the idea that the fear doesn't actually go away. Mm-mm. Like, sometimes we do something and then we feel less fear about doing it the next time.
Yeah.
But often that fear doesn't actually go away, and then we just get to keep being courageous.
Yeah. And that just builds confidence. So it's not that the fear goes away. We just know how to handle it a lot better, and we understand that's a part of life, right?
Yes. And we get momentum from it.
Yeah.
Right? Like, there's
fear
momentum.
can become fuel. Yeah, it is.
Yes.
It's a perspective thing, for sure.
I love that. Fear can become fuel. Yes.
I think there's always a choice, and I'm a both and, so I can really see it from, I'm so both and sickening. But like, yeah. And that's a huge part of like my existence, is the both and. Like, it could be both things. I think, if it can challenge you, it can change you, and how it changes you is your choice. I say that a lot. And maybe sometimes it's not a choice, but it can be.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, that's powerful. Powerful stuff. So, okay. So I love that. I mean, I love that example of becoming a public health entrepreneur and actually finding courage in all these moments in your life, right? Mm-hmm. That's good stuff. So I want to ask you also about claiming and expressing your power, because courage, part of it is taking action despite fear, but part of it is also claiming and expressing your power, especially in spaces that don't always welcome it.
Right.
And so I'm curious about how you express and embody your power as a Black woman doing the work of public health. Especially in spaces that may not always welcome it. And that is literally the life story of so many folks. Yes. Who have minoritized identities and the intersectionality of multiple, identities. I take space and I make space. I take space because I am a human and I have a human right to be here. And I make space because I also understand the privilege that I have and how I got into certain spaces and places, whether it's my light skin advantage or my degrees or a position that I had at work or funding that I received. And I have to be very clear about my advantage and privileges moving in and out of spaces, especially as someone who works in community, because I may understand the patterns of power imbalance, but I do not understand the nuances that impact people directly. And so I am not paternalistic in how I come into any space and place. But my very existence, I understand, is an embodiment of my power. My existence is resistance.
I say that a lot as well because I continue to do the work of being rooted in who I am, whose I am. I understand that when I show up as my authentic full self, that is my freest self, and my free self is my best self. And that's when you're going to get the best from me. And you may not understand that yet, but I do, right? And I had to learn that. I had to dismantle things internally. But it's so counter to our dominant culture that we inherited and we operate within. Who I am in my colorful, joyful, creative self challenges other people who are afraid of being who they are in their full selves, because we're all code switching in some ways, although I will say it impacts Black and brown folks at a much deeper level, and I will never not name that, right? But we are all impacted and missing out on gifts of others when we are operating in this one way of being. Right. And then so that is a struggle for folks. And I understand that. But at the same time, I always go back to understanding and being rooted and grounded in the fact that I am inspiring the next generation of people that need to know leaders like me exist, that we're not going to all get shiny titles. We're not going to all get fellowships and accolades. We're not all going to become CEOs and get PhDs. But it does not make us any less of leaders. And advancing love and liberation in our communities for our own healing, for our families, for our extended families, which we consider folks in our culture of the diaspora family. Like, it is so much deeper than DEI, honey.
Yes.
And I think that knowing who I am and whose I am allows me to also be accountable to those most impacted by power imbalance, honoring those who made a way for me. That is a responsibility for me. But also, I'm carrying a torch that was passed to me, and I'm lighting the way for those who come behind me, because unfortunately, this is a continuum. We're not there yet. And so I show up in honesty, humility, humanity. We're always learning. We're always wise. I'm not an expert on anything but my own experience. And call in oppressive structures in public health and beyond with love, because I know we can do better. And that these structures and cultures are harming all of us. And that we can be better stewards of humanity. We can find entry places for change when we slow down and think outside of this limiting box instead of rushing to check it for performative reasons. Yeah.
I have to just take a breath into that. That's yeah.
That's a lot.
That's a lot. But I do love the idea of taking and making space.
Yes,
you take
it's
up
both
space.
and.
Both and.
Because I know somebody's not in that room that needs to be in that room, and I can't speak for all of us. But I do know there are people we're ignoring. It's not that the voice don't have a voice list, it's that we're not listening.
Yes. Well, and it's interesting right now when, our public health infrastructure is being torn apart, taken down.
Yes.
Which is just so hard to see. But then, is there a possibility that we actually create something better?
Is there a glimmer of light in the dust particles from the devastation? I don't know, but I'd like to have hope. And I feel like we were here before during COVID, and here we are again. I'm like, okay, is this it? Is this it?
Yeah. Yeah. But this is where we all get to be our full authentic selves and come with the passion that you clearly have to make change.
Yeah.
Yeah. I also love that you said, like, I'm an expert. I'm only an expert in my own experience. I really wish that more people understood that.
Yeah, especially in public health, we are very paternalistic, and I can take ownership. Part of this work was doing the internal confrontation with myself in the mirror and say, where have you been perpetuating this power imbalance? Even though you are part of these communities in certain ways and you've worked your way out, you understand the power imbalance and what it shows up as. But at the same time, how are you perpetuating as someone who's a gatekeeper with a badge on?
Yeah.
I had to be honest about that.
Yeah.
And then like the struggle between wearing a badge and not, like as a person who's in community and organizer or just in community justice spaces, and then also as a government employee. And where's the disconnect when I can't advocate, only educate? And what does that mean to someone who both lives and works in the same zip codes? What are you telling me? What are you saying? And so then that conundrum, right? And having to make those hard choices. And knowing harm is being done because you're in both sides of it. And so that's been just there's no curriculum or no degree that could have taught me the things that I learned working in community with on the ground, front lines. Most important job they have a lot of the data that we need to be tapping into, quite frankly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I mean, just the idea of approaching public health from a justice standpoint, you know, people come into public health in lots of different ways, right? And from lots of different backgrounds. So you have people who come in to public health, you know, because they were interested in biology or, you know, pre-med or immunology, you know, the sciences piece. And then I'm someone who I found my way to public health through math. Like I was a math major, and it was math that actually brought me into epidemiology. But the idea of coming into public health from a justice perspective is really powerful, and it's really needed. It's really needed. So I very much appreciate that's how you, that's how you are coming. And that you said something that reminded me of, I often talk about how I see the world through a public health lens. And you see the world through a public health justice lens.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's really through our experiences, right? Like our lived experience adds such a layer to how we move in this world. Because I often tell people, I had the narratives before the numbers. I had the stories before the statistics. When I got the statistics, I realized that we were perpetuating assumptions about Black women when we were saying that they were at the bottom of everything as far as disparities, without looking at the stress that is induced when we look at race and gender. And that wasn't for so long. And I went to school for exercise science. So fat phobia is really, and I was a fat fitness and dance instructor. So like just my experience as that, and how it's connected to all the different forms of oppression and how you're treated differently as a different body size. So looking at all those things and the experience that I lived, because I wanted to teach healthy eating and I had a bigger body and I dared to get out and dance and call that physical activity or exercise, right? So like it started at a young person saying, can't we do this? Or this isn't working, or why aren't Black girls in the gym? Like it was just me being curious, and that forever being a personal, professional, and political practice of mine. Because if we're not curious, how can we collaborate? We have totally different experiences, and we'll never know that if we continue to stay on either side of the aisle and not build those bridges to the unknown because of fear. Again, bringing it back to the fear, I think that's the problem, right? That is hindering us from so much love and freedom that we could all have, and then the needs that would be tended to most importantly. It feels so simple to me, but maybe I've been thinking about these things too long.
Not too long. But you have been thinking about these things, which is what yeah. I don't always feel like in these interviews that I have to have some like moments of silence to really breathe. But yeah, this is stuff that I want to make space for it, even just with my breath.
Yeah. Breath is so powerful. Mm-hmm.
Breath is so powerful.
It's a shared human biomechanical process that we all have. We can connect across space and time with breath.
I know.
And it's a human function, and without it, you that's something that we all can.
Like we need in this country and then in the world, like we need moments where it's like, okay, we are all literally going to take a collective breath.
Yeah. Reset. I mean, breathing is so good for grounding. It's such a great tool when we use it, when we learn how to use it. I wish we learned stuff like that in school from a young age. Yeah. How to regulate our bodies, how to feed our bodies nourishing, those type of things. Yes. And they weren't electives, but like they were literally like we have to learn how to care for our human bodies, mental and emotional and physical. Like that's a whole nother podcast episode.
And I know. I have to have you come back for that one. Totally. Oh my gosh. Yes. But I agree that, there are a lot of things that we don't learn from the time we're little in school that I think could really also make some big changes, like learning about, you said, how to breathe, how to care for our bodies, but also how to care for our communities, and how to recognize that we are part of community. Like if that could be in the first grade curriculum, I would totally support that.
Yeah, like our well-being is bound. As humans, we're born to connect. Neuroscience teaches us that. And what if we taught across sectors? Like also, like I bring sociology into my work, psychology,
Yes.
human behavior. I am enamored by human behavior because I was enamored with the anatomy of the human body. But there's so much we don't know. And I only know that because I went to school and opted in for those classes. And so knowing what I know and understanding that so many people don't know it in the same way is constantly frustrating, especially in public health. When you're exercise science and you go into public health and they're like, eat less, exercise more. You're like, well, actually, there's a little bit more of an equation to that. And no, like, and it's so many things. And then the BMI, which is just outdated, archaic, and like so many things we need to revamp and reimagine. But yeah, it's not serving us well.
Yeah. And you're talking about curiosity, right? Mm-hmm. Like curiosity got you into the exercise science piece. Curiosity like led you through the work that you said you've done, with dance and women with bigger bodies. Like curiosity and courage, I think, are really connected.
I mean,
right?
Being curious is a courageous act too, because
oh my gosh,
I'm gonna be curious across these lines. We rarely do that. We're socialized into lines, honey, single file lines. It's and if you think about a line is 180 degrees and circles are 360. That's full circles, and more circles means less hierarchy. But we have tables and boxes that we check in lines. So if you think about like even from the analogies that we use, like getting a seat at the table.
Yeah,
that's part of the problem. It's the hierarchy, it's the structure, it's the lines, and lines are limiting. Love is liberating. And so I tend to think, from a young age around circles, because my mother was an energy healer and we were in meditation circles. So that's where I learned how to breathe and connect to my body. Didn't know what was going on at all, Christy, but it was a practice that was being instilled in me to be still, to listen to myself, that your body is going to inform you about danger and other things, but we're so often socialized outside of ourselves. To trust a person because they're a teacher or some older person in a leadership position, but that doesn't always mean good things, right? Yeah. So all of these things, and not listening to your gut when your gut might say, this doesn't feel right. Those my mom was really intentional about me learning those things, but that's something we had to learn.
Yes. Oh my gosh. And as a small person, right, you're learning those things. You don't even necessarily realize that you're learning those things. Right. And you have no idea how much that's going to impact you as an adult. Yeah. And I don't even want to say what a favor your mom did, but like what a gift.
Yeah.
To give you that.
Yeah.
It's like the gift that keeps on giving. Right?
And of course, I didn't know. I'm like, it's funny now because I'm like, thank you, Mom, I get it. And she's like, I told you, she's
right,
like, she was
right.
basking in the glory of like, I knew I was right, honey. I'm your mother.
Yes. and honestly, like, it's okay if we don't get it.
Right.
And then we get it.
Yeah.
Like, that's okay.
It sure is. It's serving its purpose, honey.
It's serving its purpose. Oh, yeah. So, all the stuff about courage and power and curiosity, it's so good. And we've talked about what's not working well in our country and our world right now, but I really want to know about your vision for the future. And I say that in terms of like your vision for public health, your vision for the communities that you work in, that you care about, and then your personal vision as well.
I think I love thinking about the future because I love Afrofuturism, which is I love to read. That was something that my mom instilled in me too, because she always used to say, Black people weren't allowed to read in this country and write. And I just always found that so odd. And like, as a young person, again, being curious about like reading and how I have found so much community in reading when I decided to like dismantle my internalized oppression and see myself at who I was and my human nature outside of like hierarchical norms, which is so devaluing and so dehumanizing. And that's really based on the foundation of like many things of what came to be in this country. Like it's just following a pattern of like power imbalance through dehumanization and division, because there's a purpose behind power acquisition, and that shows up in our organizations and in our communities as well. But it also shows up in how we operate with each other. And so What I would love public health, and I love public health, so I know, I feel like we have the people. I really do. I feel like we have the people. We just need to practice a little differently, maybe switch up our leadership. But I would love for us to stop performing and start really practicing. I really thought that window of COVID and seeing racial unrest and everything piled up, I do feel like it was a catalyst, and I don't feel like we lost the people that were sparked into action at the time. I do think that everybody still isn't on board all the way or all the way ready, and that's okay. We don't freeze people in time, but I would just love to see us stop like box checking and start course correcting. I think that, yes, I would love to see all new institutions, but the truth of the matter is we have real time needs that need to be tended to. And
Absolutely.
how are we operating in a both and, not just tearing down things, but as I said, what we're practicing is a form of protest.
Mm-hmm.
We need to also be building something different, because we know that something different exists, and we need something to hold us or sustain us as we are tearing these things down. So and we all have different gifts in both of those areas. So how do we organize around that, right? Public health is deeply, to me, connected to social justice because of the things that we have done. Has it always been all encompassing? And no. And has it been comfortable around race as a topic? Not necessarily, no. But yeah, we like to tout how we're rooted in social justice historically when we think about child labor laws and things of that nature. But I think about the emergence of public health and the timeline in which it came up. And I know where Black folks were on that timeline. So I always think about that. I would love for us to ensure that our words just align with our ways. You saw a lot of beautiful things going up on websites and missions and values. I would love to see public health and entities put out what it looks like in practice. What does it feel like when it's in practice? How do you know that you are actually upholding these values? Because that goes a little bit more into practicing. This is what you will see us doing when we feel like this is being honored, and do that in a co-creative way. I truly believe that we must transform ourselves to transform the world. And that's a Grace Lee Boggs quote. That is a huge quote in how I live my life. My journey of cultural humility and transformation has changed me immensely, and the work that I do. And so it just always reminds me that we can change when we get different information and different education. And exploration is education. And exploration goes back to being curious. Yes. And how are we being curious around things outside of ourselves, with the understanding that we all have these very unique experiences, right? Which then means we also, I think I would love to see, and for us to do this from the root, we really need to overhaul our curriculums. Our curriculums need to be cross-disciplined philosophies and theories, from sociology to neuroscience to human behavior to historical and political analysis of our systems in this country that impact our health, because health is in everything. And I know a lot of people, public health people, say this, but that is so true. Everything around us impacts our physical, mental, emotional, and even spiritual health. Our communities are part of our health and well-being. How our communities are supportive and how are they taken care of is also part of how we are healing in some of our communities. So it's so important to, how we move forward, improve our health, but also just improve who we could be as a people, as a place. Like, we could be so much better. And yeah, just overall, when we understand that our liberation is bound and so is our well-being, I think that public health and all communities that I care about, BIPOC communities, I think we'll be better off. Because even within our most impacted communities, right, outside of public health, we're also fighting across our what it seems to be, we have single issues, but they're all connected at the root, and we don't really understand that. Yeah. So beyond public health working systemically, also our communities working in solidarity, right? What would happen if we were supporting each other because we understood that our fight is the same? Audre Lorde has this quote, and I love it. And it's something like, you do not have to be me in order for us to fight alongside each other. And I do not have to be you to recognize that our wars are the same. And there's some more in there, but it's always a reminder that, first of all, Audre Lorde was alive doing this way before I came along. There are strategies. We have people. We have blueprint. Yes. So it's not that we don't have answers or ways forward. We just have to relinquish power. We have to be humble and real and put the trust into the hands of people that might know a little bit more. Who haven't we trusted, right? And so I really think about that a lot. And for me personally, it's just showing up in the ways that I want to see change happen. It is literally practicing towards progress. I used to do this as a fitness and health educator. I would always practice. I called it practicing what I preach. I don't use that word as much anymore because preaching is not what we're doing. But I would never invite people to try things that I hadn't tried, whether it was a healthy snack or an exercise, or I never did things that was outside of anything I ever tried. Right. And so I feel like when you practice and you see other people doing it, it makes it accessible. Yes. Because we don't know what we're supposed to do. But if you notice how someone's showing up, it gives you a little more courage and confidence to do that too. I'm not alone. And so those small radical acts that we're making, even in the moments where we're by ourselves, matter to the collective, even if that other person across the world or across the country or a city or town didn't see you, they're doing the same thing. And so that matters to the collective. And so all of these things for me are connected, but like in public health, who are we at the individual level? Who are we becoming, not just what we're doing? And I see this across all systems, and then also interpersonally, how does that shape our relationships? How does that then impact our institutions to create space for more people? And how does that trickle out into society? I think there's layers and levels and lenses to this, I often say. And it doesn't always have to happen in a linear way. It can happen. Multiple things can be happening at once.
It never happens in a linear way.
Right. And in other words, we really do hang on to that linear idea on so many things of like the ladder of success.
Yeah.
That's a linear. I'm like, there's no ladder over here, honey. Yeah. I haven't found it yet.
It's like, what was that game? Like Candyland or something where there, there's chutes and ladders where it's like,
Candyland.
So something, Candyland. One of those had ladders that were like.
They both did. And I used to love them both.
They both did. It's not like one ladder. It's like you go up here and then you have to go over here and then you go up and then you got to go down.
Back and have to
go all the way back. You got to start again.
Yeah, that's actually a great analogy. Yeah,
that's life is definitely like that, and this work is definitely like that. Yeah, and I want to say, so for our listeners who are not watching the video, I just have to say that you are in front of a bookshelf that has a lot of books on it, and it doesn't just have books on it, but you've displayed them in this really fantastic way. So you can it looks like I'm at a bookstore and I'm looking at a book display. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I love that actually. Good.
Right?
That's
and it's
what I'm going for.
That's the look you're going for. Well, you've totally done it. And you've got, some posters up and a guitar in the background. So, yeah. And I don't know if you want to say anything about the books that are behind you. Cause
so
reading, I love what you said about reading. So reading then becomes an act, a radical act. Given the history.
Reading is resistance. Like exactly.
Reading is resistance.
Just on the history alone. But another thing that I often say is like, when you learn something different, it opens your mind up to a whole nother place. And books will take you somewhere you may not ever get to go. Even like when we think about travel or just like, there's so many different genres that you could go in so many different places, not just knowledge. But I think for me with books, when I think about, I hear people saying now a lot like, I always say knowledge is power, which it definitely is. If it can disrupt your normative thinking, that is very powerful. But people say, it has to be applied knowledge. And first you got to read it. You can't apply anything if you don't have any deep foundational understanding of what you're talking about. So when people say, applied knowledge, I'm like, you don't know how to apply it if you're not reading enough. Like I have read all of these books that I have. First of all, also another side note here, colors bring me joy. So a way that I operate in my life is through color. So I do things that bring me joy, like in the smallest ways. So a mantra of mine is rest, joy, pleasure, boundaries. And it's really based off of books by Black women around rest, pleasure, activism, and boundaries. And they're Black women that I follow, and they have cards. So I have built activities as a facilitator around these, and how we build better relationships when we're rooted in ourselves using rest, joy, pleasure, and boundaries to like sustain us. And that it's so much deeper than self-care, that it's about self-love. It's really about that's self-love for me in my body is a radical act.
Yeah.
Because I'm not even meant to be I wasn't even meant to survive. I'm not even supposed to be here. I mean, based on history.
Yeah.
So this in the background is almost what I often call like another degree. It's like it's a dissertation. It is the books that I've read that have guided me and sustained me, and have helped to shape my lens outside of my degrees. And some of these I have read as because I do have a degree in social justice and community organizing. But the interesting thing is I've used some of the same tools in my Master's of Public Health that I used in my Master's of Social Justice. And that was really interesting to look at how many things that we did that were overlapping, because I was talking a lot about both in both programs.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I like to display it because, first of all, this is part of who I am. This is an extension of who I am. And I like how you say, like, we're part of our communities. We are extensions of the communities we serve.
Yes.
If we don't understand anything beyond just the fact that as humans, we have a shared humanity and it's not us and them. So I just wanted to add that in there. But this is an extension of me and my knowledge. This is not going to show up on my resume. Right. As I'm going through the process of pivoting my gifts to other, it's just been interesting, this whole job search thing. There are so many issues that I think HR needs to deal with. Like, there are so many, I would love to have like a whole curriculum on it, because there are so many things that are oppressive that are happening in these interviews that unacceptable. But anyway, this behind me is a colorful array of many books that have poured into me from ancestors that have gone on: Angela Davis, Andrea Ritchie, Audre Lorde, Bell Hooks. Love as a Practice is really important to me. Strategies of Abolition, Activism, Black Panther, Black Power Movement, and also Black Feminist Theory and Critical Race Theory, which is not just like something we study, but it's the way that I move in the world. So while I know it's been getting weaponized in media, critical race theory is literally how some of us look at the world. And it was a gift for us to share that in academic spaces, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway.
No, it's great. It's colorful, and you are wearing something colorful, and your nails are colorful, and yes to color. Yes to color.
And
Love
any
it.
way that I can get joy, we gotta find it.
Yes. It's been so nice to talk to you. Really, what a gift. I'm really excited that now we are connected. And you are inspiring me. Now I'm like, I'm gonna have to go into the video and like actually get some of the names of the books and yeah, I mean, I have my bookshelf behind me as well, but I am always excited to add new things.
Always growing. It doesn't seem like it
expands me.
It doesn't get any shorter, right? My list is
right. Oh my gosh. No. So let me ask what the best way is for our listeners to connect with you, because I want them to be able to learn more about you, and I want them to be able to learn more about your courage.
Yeah, thank you. Well, transparently, I do not have a website. I decided a few years ago when I started working for myself that I wanted to experiment working through relationship. And so I really, in order to do that, it was like, okay, so I really don't want to solicit. I really want to work through network, people who know me, who refer me, word of mouth, and I go where I'm invited. And that is an organizing principle of mine. That is a safety mechanism of mine. I know that everyone, especially these days, is not going to be on board, and I'm not for everybody, and that's okay. And I have grace for that, and that is just fine. But I think the people that need me find me, and vice versa. So LinkedIn is fine. I talk to everyone. I always say, reach out to me. I might not respond right away, but I do stay in touch and respond to people. And I love to connect. I have a calendar where I, with a schedule, I usually send that to folks if they reach out and they want to connect. I'm open to that. I'm not super busy. I try to make space as much as possible as my schedule allows. So yeah.
Space to breathe too. Time to breathe.
100%. Yeah. That's part of it. That's a huge part of it. Yeah.
Okay. That's great. Well, we'll include that in the show notes, and so people can reach out and connect that way. As I said, that's how I connected with you. So yeah, it works. Yeah. Thank you so much. What a pleasure. And as I said, I'm glad that we're connected now.
All right.
Sometimes courage is leaving the safety of familiar paths to follow your calling. Sometimes courage is showing up fully, colorful, curious, and unapologetically whole. Sometimes courage is practicing what you preach, even when no one is watching. Jannah Bierens reminds us that courage is about making space for truth, joy, and liberation, starting with ourselves. You can connect with Jannah on LinkedIn to learn more about her and her courage. All the links to connect with her are on our show notes page for this episode, located on our website, courageouspublichealth.com, under episode 19. Before you return to your day, take a minute to sign up for the weekly Courageous Public Health podcast email updates so you never miss an episode. You can do that on our website, courageouspublichealth.com, because there is so much more great stuff to come. Thanks so much for being here, and until our next episode, stay courageous.
Thank you for listening to the Courageous Public Health Podcast. Visit courageouspublichealth.com to find the show notes for each episode and learn how to connect with us.